Hey everyone, it's Cooking with Anto. I have my doggy Dexter with me. Just wanting you to know that this week's recipe is absolutely delicious. And my dog is bored. Okay. Okay. I love you. So my dog is bored, obviously. I don't entertain him with this video stuff. And I've made some... You can go, Bubs. Go ahead. You can go. I've made some homemade donuts and Boston cream and chocolate frosted. So yeah, homemade donuts, they're simple, but they are a little labor intensive. It takes a little bit of work and they do freeze nicely. It's just you would have to freeze them after frying them. You let them cool off, you freeze them. You can't frost them or fill them before you throw them into the freezer. And it's a recipe, like I said, that makes a lot of donuts. So if you don't want that many, you would cut it in half. They're way better than any donuts you can get at supermarkets, and definitely, you know, I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I just think their donuts are subpar, and if you ever make them homemade, you probably won't ever want to buy them from a store again. So yeah, let's get on to the video. I'm gonna start off with making the filling first. So if you don't want to make donuts with filling, you can skip past that part, okay? All right, guys. So as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to stop by on What's on Your Plate on Facebook. I always say this, it's an amazing group of people that post so many delicious dishes. And I've also started my own page as well. So Cooking with Anto on Facebook. Come click like, post pictures, post videos of yourself cooking, you know, whatever, post recipes. Everybody just come by. And I'm Cooking with Anto 97 on Instagram as well. The more followers I start getting on those pages, the more I'll update them. I just don't want to torture the small amount of people that are on that page with posts every day, but the more people I get, the more I'll post. All right, guys, as always, thanks for watching. All right, so I'm starting off with the custard here. I have my 4 egg yolks. I'm adding in some sugar, I add in some cornstarch, and then I mix it all up. If you're not making Boston cream, you just want a chocolate frosted, skip over to the 4-minute and 50-second mark to pass this step. So you're going to be mixing it as much as you can and as fast as you can. It's going to look very dry and it's going to look like you did something wrong, but you're just going to continue mixing it. You see how it's stuck between my whisk? I just bang it down and get that out. No big deal. You're going to keep whisking nonstop until it gets smooth. And like I said, the more you whisk, the more smoother it will become. Just watch the next step and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So here we go. I would say there's about 5 minutes of whisking by hand and it's starting to already look like that Boston cream custard, right? While you're doing this, you want to scald some milk and then let it cool, by the way, because that's another ingredient for the Boston cream custard. So these are egg yolks, right? And if we add in hot liquid to this, it's going to scramble, and we don't want that to happen. So we add in the milk little by little, and you have to give this milk some time to cool off, of course. And there you go. You just add in a little bit, and you keep whisking it all together. I'm just adding in a little bit and stopping at this point because it's hard for the bowl not to continue moving if I'm holding the hand. So I'm going to try to do it where I'm continuously putting in the scalded milk. And as you can see, it's a little difficult to do with 2 hands and not being able to hold the bowl. So that's why I have to put it down every once in a while. And you just continue mixing it until all of it is incorporated. And it's really not that hard. So I'm going to continue adding in my milk until it's all done. And then you'll see the consistency right now that I'm talking about. So here we go. This is with all the milk added in. You want to just mix it all together. And as you can see, no scrambled eggs. That's a good thing. So we're going to add all of this back into the same pot that you warmed up the milk in. That's my dog in the background. Probably the mailman passing by or something. And my daughter's playing with Dad. So you'll hear some noise in the background. All right. So I have the custard mix on the stove. So you want to do this slowly. Me, I had the heat too high. I had it at about a medium. I would suggest a medium low. And it takes a little longer, but it comes out more smoother. And this custard came out good for how fast it cooked. But if you see how fast I'm stirring with the whisk, that's literally how fast you have to stir. Absolutely, because it will clump up and you don't want it to be clumpy. So I turned off the heat and I'm going to continue mixing. So once it's cooled off, you put it in a bowl, and then you cover the top of the custard with a plastic wrap so that this way it doesn't form a skin, and you just refrigerate it until your donuts are done. So on to actually making the dough for the donuts. We have my yeast that we've used here. I usually have a container, a huge container of yeast. I just haven't bought one recently. So you need to add in water to activate the yeast, and you need to have that thermometer I just showed you. And that's because the water can't go above 110 degrees, but that's where it needs to be in order for the yeast to activate. And I put in a little bit of sugar to help that along. And I just mix it all together, and just to get those clumps on the bottom, you want to mix it all together with a whisk and make sure it's all incorporated, and then you leave it alone. And you know when it's ready because your house actually smells like beer. Like it's the best smell in the world. It smells like beer, and that's because that's what, beer has yeast in it. All right, so it's all poofed up, and that's exactly what it should look like. If it doesn't look that way, you've done something wrong. Start over. So I'm adding in my ingredients now. I use shortening in my donut recipe, not milk, with sugar and some eggs. And then I'm going to start mixing it with the dough hook attachment, because obviously you need the dough hook because it's dough, and it is doughy, and a mixer won't work, and neither will the paddle attachment. So I start off slowly by adding some flour just to get the dough incorporated. And if you add in all your flour at once, it's going to make a huge mess, and your stand mixer is going to have a hard time mixing everything. So you just want to have like a starter dough. You see how slow it's going right now? Just do that until you have a little bit of the liquid mixed in with your flour, and then you can start adding in more flour as it starts getting more incorporated. But just remember that you always have to scrape the sides of your bowl. And you do that because sometimes the flour gets stuck and your dough hook isn't touching, the side of the bowl. So you want to make sure you don't leave any flour behind or any ingredients behind while you're making these. So I put it up to a medium high as I start to add in the rest of the flour, since I already have the base going. So here we go with the rest of the flour. And as always, the amount and ingredient list is at the bottom of the video. If you click the little arrow below my video, it has a drop-down menu with all of the ingredients, the amounts you need, etc. And I do that just so that everyone has it, and I don't have it coming down on the screen and you have to read it quickly. I find that leaving it written down bottom is better. So as you can see, the machine is up to about a medium low right now. And I've added in my the rest of the flour, and I'm just going to keep mixing it. And I have my last cup, I believe. Maybe second to last cup. No, this is my last cup of flour. And what I do is I just put it down and I start mixing it on high at this point. This isn't a tough recipe. It requires some kind of baking skill, and it does require patience because it is definitely one of those recipes that take a long time. So this is something I would do on a Sunday, a nice Sunday treat. It's not something I have time to do during the week because the process of the dough having to rise twice, which takes a long time, and obviously during the week, nobody has time for that kind of stuff. It's more like a weekend treat. So you keep mixing it, and then eventually it starts looking more like a dough that you'd be able to roll out. And then I mix it some more, and you keep going. As you notice, it's picking up the rest of the dough, and it's forming like a ball on the dough hook. You just keep going until you form that ball. And I think I'm about ready at this point because I can just scrape the rest off of the bottom. I don't want to add more flour. I mean, I could do that, but I don't want to. The dough needs to be somewhat sticky. And then what you're going to do is you leave it in this, you take it out of this bowl, and you're going to need some flour on your hands. And you see how sticky that is? All right, so that's why you need flour on your hands, because the dough will stick everywhere if you don't flour your hands. You also put some flour on top of the dough because that's how you're going to get it to scrape out of this bowl, okay? So once you do that, you're going to flour a regular bowl that you can put your dough into, and this needs to rise. How long? Depends on how warm warm or hot or cold your house is. What I normally do is during this process, I put my oven on to like 160, and then I turn it off, and then I cover this with plastic wrap and I throw it in there. The directions on how long for both rising times are at the bottom of the video as well. So you want it to rise double in size, as you can see right here. I've put my flour down because I'm about to actually begin to roll it out. And it's going to look flat. Don't be nervous. That's just the way it looks. Just get it out there and then work some more flour into it. Just a little bit, not much. And incorporate the rest of the flour and turn it into like a ball. Okay, now you want to start rolling out the dough. This is the part where you don't want it too thin, but you also don't want the donuts to be too thick. And you roll it out as much as you can so that this way you can get as many donuts on the first try, because you don't want to continue, you don't want to cut out 5 or 6 donuts and then have to re-roll it, right? Because you're working the dough too much. So roll it out as far as you can, cut as many donuts out as you can. You do need a donut cutter if you want to make like munchkins. Okay, if you don't want to make munchkins, just use anything you have available with a sharp edge. That works. You see the thinness of this? I'm going to flip it over so that I start off on the floured side. So I use my donut cutter, but I put it in some flour so it doesn't get stuck and I can easily cut the shapes out. And these are for the chocolate frosted donuts, and I'm also making some munchkins, okay? The Boston Cream Donuts I have just a regular circle cutter, and I do it that way because obviously you don't want a hole in the center of your Boston Cream Donuts. So just keep cutting them out. Try to get them as close to each other as possible so you're not having to rework the dough so much. So I'm going to go in right now with my regular cutter, and I will just cut the regular size for the Boston Cream. So now you need them to double up in size, and you're going to cover them with a damp towel. Make sure you have some parchment paper underneath so it doesn't get stuck, okay? So this is what they look like when they've doubled in size. Those little scrap pieces I didn't want to re-roll, so I just made some random sized donuts. And that's what they look like when they're doubled in size. That takes about, I would say, an hour for them to double in size this way, okay? So now you're just going to fry your donuts. I would say you would keep the frying oil at about 325 degrees because there's nothing that has to cook here. And you don't want your donuts having a brown outer coat. You don't want them over fried, just enough to have that nice crispy edges to them. So this is what some of the batches look like. Okay, just like a golden brown. So, of course, at the bottom of the video, again, I've listed the chocolate frosting recipe as well. So you want to mix that up. It takes like seconds, okay? So after your donuts have semi-cooled, you want to dip them in this way, and then you want to just turn it so that this way it stops dripping, and then you set them aside and let them crust up because the glaze is supposed to crust up, and it will if you've done the recipe correctly. Just keep doing that with all of your donuts. If you want to freeze some, though, you would freeze them after frying them. They cool off, you freeze them, you don't fill them or cover them in glaze if you're going to freeze them. So now the custard I've put into a piping bag with a tip, and this is the Boston Cream Donut. As you can see, no hole in the middle. So what I do is I kind of just squeeze the tip inside, and I just squeeze the custard in as much as I can. I wiggle around so that I have like an even amount of custard in the donut, and then I sometimes will, if I don't think I've got a good amount, I will flip the donut on the other side and fill it from there as well. And by wiggling it around, you're also doing yourself a service because you don't want it to, if you don't wiggle it around and make room for the custard, it's going to pop out through the top or the sides, and you don't want that to happen, right? Because then you can't really glaze them. So you fill them first before you glaze them, because if you glaze them first, then you have to wait for the glaze to set and then, fill them, and that's just working backwards. So you do it this way first. It's really not a hard recipe. It's just very, it takes a lot of work of how long it takes to rise and all that other stuff and the several steps. So, okay. You would glaze it the same way you do your chocolate frosted donuts. Now you can add sprinkles at this time. You can add chocolate chips. You can use like a different colored chocolate and just put some stripes on the top to make it look pretty. You can decorate them and be as creative as you want. All right. So let me show you what it looks like. So, do you see that delicious custard on the inside of the donut? And it is so smooth. I bit into it so you can see what it looks like inside. The crust on the top, you don't want it to be soft, but you don't want it to be hard, like, rock solid chocolate, because then you can't bite into it. So I'm going to show you the chocolate frosted donuts that I made as well, so you can get a better idea of what the crust looks like. But look at that custard. It came out perfect. Absolutely delicious. And you can see right here how it's set, Now, the donuts came out nice and fluffy, and they have that delicious crispy edge. Now, don't mind my fingers. They're all messed up with chocolate under my nails and stuff. But anyhow, I'm going to press down, and you'll see how I can leave a fingerprint. Now, if I press down too far, it's still going to have that smooth chocolatey texture, but at least the top stays nice and set. And that's the way it's supposed to look. So, if you guys try the recipe and you like it, please leave me some feedback. Send me some pictures, okay? And let me know how everything came out. And as always, thank you guys for sharing my video and watching. Bye!